Well, hey, welcome back, boys and girls, to the Square of the Circle music channel. It's me, your old pal Mage. That's right, we're going to talk about circles and squares today. All things collectible, particularly vinyl records. That's right. We like to talk about music appreciation. We like to kind of like pick things apart. We like to just have a great time with it sometimes. So we're going to do that today. This is going to be another series, another episode in a series that I've been doing the last couple of days called Sick as a Dog, Major, Stuck at Home, Sick as a Motherfucker, which can be kind of fun. Sometimes you dope yourself up on some Dayquil and you get familiar with some stuff that you haven't been fully familiarized with yet. I guess you could probably figure out what it is we are going to talk about today. That's right, the Prog legends, the band Yes. One of my very, very favorite bands of all time. Definitely top 3 of my favorite bands of all time. And like I said, the kind of what you could consider to be the second half of their career from basically mid-90s till present day, I am not hyper familiar with. I wouldn't even say like moderately familiar with. There's bits and pieces of it that I've really latched onto that I love dearly. But as a whole, the second half of their career, I was none too familiar with. And so I really got to like sit down and dig deep the last couple days while I've been stuck at home, plastered to the couch, just like trying to survive. So pardon me while I take little sips of hot tea in between everything I'm doing here. Man, it just started up here and now it's migrated down here. Oof, it's kicking my ass. But let's talk about Yes, Prog heavyweights from the UK. Yes, everyone knows about them. I want to do a ranking video. I've never done a ranking video. Never really I'm not a hater of ranking videos, but I've never wanted to kind of like pick a career apart to that degree, you know what I mean? And when talking about a 50+ year career, it's like, man, that's a lot of work. But I've actually had this as an episode idea, like on the back burner for quite some time. So I know it may seem like I'm kind of just like being a bit of a copycat, but who isn't, you know, on the internet? I'm not trying to be a copycat and whatever. I just, like I said, I've had this on the back burner for a long time. It takes a lot of effort and research and time and energy to really like put out a comprehensive, thoughtful, kind of like a real list here. And being sick the last few days, I really had a chance to do that on the ass end of my weekend as well. So I knew last week that I wanted to dedicate some real time to this band and how much I love them. And in a not so nasty, I'll try to keep it pleasant as I can. I'm going to pick apart their career to a certain degree, just a little bit here. So we're going to do a ranking of all their studio albums. In my opinion, there's 20 of them. A lot of people will say there's 21 or 22. That's fine. I'll explain myself, you know, maybe midway through the video. So let's just get right into it, shall we? We're ranking the Yes studio albums here, starting at 20, which I'm sure a lot of you will agree with me and expect this. This is a real common denominator in the realm of Yes fans as being kind of, you know, the most despised album from them. I've not watched any real ranking videos of people on YouTube that rank the Yes videos. I mean, a little bit, but not really in research of. So I'm excited to see. I'm going to watch some after I do this, and I kind of wanted to go into this like a bit unbiased to a certain degree, because I'm kind of a recent Yes fan. I'm an 80s kid, Generation X, and I didn't discover Yes until I was an adult in the early to mid 2000s. So I've only been listening to Yes for like 15 years. So cut me some slack, guys. Number 20 on my list, and the only Yes album that I could honestly say, like after 10 to 15 minutes of listening to it, I had to turn it off. That hurts to say about one of your favorite bands, but this truly is really the only album where I was just like, okay, stop, you know, and I just couldn't keep going with it. Of course, I'm talking about Open Your Eyes, 1997. Not really sure in the history of what they were doing. They were still touring a bunch, right? Because they put out a bunch of material in those years, a bunch of new material. I'm talking like, you know, between 94 and 2000. In the late 90s, they were doing some shit. A lot of their new material wasn't fantastic, but this was just kind of like the steaming turd of it all, I guess. Just, you know, Chris Squire and Billy Sherwood were just kind of like the two that were really only doing a majority of all that songwriting, and that kind of those years, 96, 97. And I guess John Anderson and Steve Howe were just kind of a late addition to the whole thing, didn't have really any creative say in what was about to happen, and they just dropped it, just kersplat. Terrible album. Primarily, really only the thing that really bothered me most about it, I guess is how I could put it, is that the production value is just god awful. It just sounds horrible and abrasive and loud, and it's just irritating. It's very irritating to listen to. So kind of a bummer. Whatever. Open your eyes. That's the last on the list, and really the only one I can say is a pile of shit. Moving right along here, number 19 on my list is their most recent album, The Quest. Didn't really like much of it. The first opening saga track, the Ice Bridge, I think is what it's called. Yeah, I wanted to, they're grasping for dear life and holding on to something that really should have been closeted and put away. Some years back, in my opinion, when Squire passed on, that should have been it. They should have just hung it up and just given the old peace out. You know, Steve Howe didn't want to do that, I guess. I don't know, the rest of the guys too, Jeff Downs. Ellen White just still kind of holding on to something that really, like I said, should have been hung up. So I really didn't like The Quest. It was just, it sounded and seemed so tired. So tired. So that's 19 on my list. Keeping on, moving down the line, trying to keep a nice quick pace on it here if I can. So this little list doesn't go on for 2 hours. 18 on my list is in that same realm, Heaven and Earth. I know that the little bit of research that I've done about other people's opinions on, like, if you were to be ranking these albums, Heaven and Earth is always like up there as far as the flip-flop as being kind of the bottom of the barrel. I didn't dislike it as much as I did the prior two that I were just talking about. Again, these guys are septuagenarians and just holding on for dear life, but at least on Heaven and Earth, it truly, you felt like, okay, they're not like trying to like give more than they're capable of, you know, and that's what The Quest sounded like to me. A bunch of scattered ramblings of a septuagenarian, you know. Heaven and Earth didn't have that. It had kind of a charming quality to it. And yeah, they were, you know, age-old dudes who are just, you know, still trying to hold on and be relevant, and there's a certain charm to that, and they did it really, really fucking well, all the way up until the death of Chris Squire, in my opinion. So Heaven and Earth, you know, whatever. 18 on my list. It's not that bad, you know. John Davison, his vocals are pretty wonderful. He's really got a great voice. So yeah, 2014, that was released, right? Not so great, but whatever. We're moving on down the line here. Number 17 on my list, which another one is people put way at the bottom for reasons that I can understand. But number 17 on my list is the Union album from 91. This, again, much like Heaven and Earth, has to me like a bit of a charm. I like them all just like being on stage and just like a giant clusterfuck. It actually, the production value sounds pretty damn good. The way they kind of, yeah, you can't hear everybody at all times, all the time. Like, you can't. And whoever was on the soundboard that day or whatever they were doing did a pretty good job of just kind of like pulling bits and pieces of everybody out into the limelight and then putting them back in the back, you know. And it's like, oh, you have the only opinion you ever hear about is the fact that, you know, Steve Howe always feels like he's being trumped upon. He's being, you know, he's always being pushed in the back. And it's like, come on, dude, like, whatever. I don't know. He gripes a lot about things in the band. He's the griper, Steve Howe. But all in all, the whole thing, I think, kind of comes together and coalesces pretty well. And yeah, I mean, Trevor Rabin's just all over that shit. And I like Trevor Rabin, so whatever. Union's not that bad. Sick fucking artwork. One of the best of Roger Dean's, you know, gifts to Yes. I love that piece that's on that cover. So yeah, you know, that was the period when everyone was just wishing they were still going to hold on to this kind of like progressive pop thing that they had morphed into, and then it kind of just blasted everyone in the face, and everyone's like, what's going on? I don't know. Union's not that bad. So that's 17 on my list. Number 16 on this man's list. This is probably going to get some eyebrows raised, some heads shaking, but I don't really like this album. I couldn't, for the life of me, put it any higher than this. I tried. I kept trying to sneak it up on the list to please all of you staunch, hard-nosed Yes fans, but I just don't like Time and a Word. 1970s Time and a Word, I think, is just a super underbaked, barely cooked, bit of a piece of shit, honestly. Chock full of really not great songs. The title track, not the title track, but the title track's terrible too. Hippie bullshit ballad. I don't know. I can't dig it. The opening track, just sporadic and weird, trying to interject the symphony into things and kind of play on that old like Moody Blues kind of thing, but then like put it into a new kind of pop art rock sense, and it fell flat on its face, in my opinion. That song, Dear Father, has got to be probably one of the worst Yes songs ever written. Yeah, that album just not great. I can't dig it. And so, yeah, that was kind of a lot of nasty things said about the early career of Yes, but it was still so formative, and they should have just taken all that and just scrapped it as B-sides and just really focused on giving it some time. Whatever happened in the history of that, I'm not sure if they were just really pressured by, Atlantic to just like, hey, we need stuff every year, every 8 months, I want a whole new album kind of thing. I don't know if maybe that was the case, but totally just underbaked and half-baked, undercooked, bit of a piece of shit. So whatever. Here we are into a new territory here. Number 15. Number 15 on my list is an album that really isn't all that bad, and a lot of people talk some smack about it, but 15, I'm going with the album Talk from 1994. There's some really great songs on that album, and it's just steeped in that era that I know and love so well. It's just kind of like the early 90s to mid 90s. They were really kind of latching onto this whole new like I wouldn't say hyper spiritual, they've always been a spiritual band to a certain degree, but now you can tell that like the Christianity is really taking hold, and they're all just getting really soaked up in this Christian, born again, kind of thematic kind of thing that they're really embracing now that they're probably in their mid 40s, and they're just kind of like moving on through life, and they're really taking on a whole new kind of like ideology, I guess you could say, interjecting little bits of ideology into their band. But I don't really mind Talk that much. I think it's a pretty good album. A lot of it I can listen to. Some of it I'll be honest, okay, I can skip through. But they were all on point. They're all playing great music. I think at this point in time, wasn't Jeff Downes still playing keyboard? Maybe they got someone else to come and play keyboard on that album. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it included a vast majority of some of the original, pseudo-original members. But yeah, pretty good, and a huge stretch, from 87 to 94. I think that's the only, there was no other studio albums. I'm sure they were doing stuff, but there was a big, wave of like, who is Yes and what is Yes and what's going on. Chris Squire had the rights to the name, I guess, but all the other guys, then you have the burgeoning of the Anderson, Bruford Wakeman Howe thing and all that. So I won't get into that quite just yet, but Talk's not that bad. That's number 15 on my list. But again, we'll go down in history in this guy's opinion as being probably the worst cover art of all the Yes albums, of pretty much all the albums in the 90s. Man, what awful cover art. So just my opinion. There's that. All right. Pardon me while I keep wetting my whistle here. My throat and everything is killing me. So, okay, well, here we are. Number 14. We're getting quite a bit higher on the list now, guys. This one, yeah, again, it was much like Time and a Word. I wanted to keep trying to get it higher on the list, but there's not a lot of redeeming qualities to it. It's still fantastic. I still love it. It's super charming, and again, credited from some of the, OG band members as being just a a real piece of shit, a real steaming turd, and a lot of the guys didn't like it, and they really kind of wanted to scrap it. But from what I've been told is that, you know, a few guys wanted to really just scrap it as a whole, but it made it out, and I'm glad it did. There's some really cool songs on it, but I'm talking about TORMATO. Number 14 for me is TORMATO. 1979, right? But, or pardon me, 78, I think. What can be said? I mean, the opening track's fantastic, got a weird new production value to everything. I can't remember who produced that album. I don't think it was Trevor Horn. But yeah, the world was doing weird things. You know, punk rock was everywhere. No one knew what to latch onto. You could tell with this album. None of the guys knew what to latch onto. Should we keep on playing some of the old fun stuff? Should we get, you know, even put you know, even more chips on the table, like, and really just ride this thing to the hill? Should we try to, you know, really change our sound and go with the flow? Like, what's happening here? And you can tell that there was just like crossroads. This album was just crossroads. But yeah, again, like I said, really, really fun songs on this album. So I wanted to try to get it higher, but I just couldn't get it higher. Just too much up there that's just far better. This album probably has my least favorite Yes song on it. I don't know, that's a stretch, because there's a lot of stuff from like I said, the last half of their career that I'm kind of still really unfamiliar with. So I'm sure there's many worse songs out there, but this one, as far as their classic career, classic Yes, dude, what is it? The Circus of Heaven? The Circus of Heaven. Oh my God. What a horrible fucking song. So stupid. Anyway, but yeah, the Arriving by UFO is awesome. It has Save the Whale song, right? Don't Kill the Whale is what it's called. I'm sorry. But yeah, the opening track is great. You know, it has some really decent songs on it. It's just not really fantastic. And I love that whole story about Rick Wakeman hating the shit out of it and like looking at the album art, and it's like, it's Hypnosis album art, but I mean, it's not really that cool. I guess Rick Wakeman just, you know, throws a tomato at it because he thinks it's god awful. And then they actually use that picture for the album art. Pretty funny. Whatever, Rick Wakeman. What an asshole. Funny guy. All right, moving on down the line. This one being higher for me than TORMATO, and another one of their like kind of later middle period, you know, everyone's not really sure what's going on, but I like this album a lot. I think it's fan-fucking-tastic, and coming out of like the horrible nature of what happened with Open Your Eyes and all of the weirdness and production and Billy Sherwood and this and that, and no one really know what's going on, and then they put something out in '99 as good as The Ladder. You know, I thought The Ladder was the shit. Really cool mix of like kind of 90s hard rock in a sense, like kind of that alt rock mixed with kind of some of the really cool, intricate old, you know, symphonic technical shit that they were doing in the mid 70s. And I don't know, it feels like a really great like mashup of wonderful styles that they really did some justice to, you know, the hard with the soft, with the symphonic, with the alternative, and it felt like a really cool alt rock album, you know, like a progressive alternative rock album. The art's fucking sick. Some of the best Roger Dean art ever. All those really cool rock spires and shit, you know, and you see the figure like walking up the ladder into the heavens. Like, I don't know, it's magnificent. I think it's a great fucking album. So yeah, that's number 12 on my list, is The Ladder. Or excuse me, that was 13. This is 12. Again, another album, a big, awesome mishmash, awesome mashup of, and this was like almost 10 years later, wasn't it? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was really close in time. Again, so that's why the sound and the style and everything was similar and meshed so well, and they just took it to another hill. I'm talking about Magnification. Magnification is 12 on my list. The title track sells it. The opening track on the album, it's just magnificent. Love Magnification. Kind of a boring cover, but it's different. I like how it's different. Really cool, you know, like hemispheric, you know, scenescape of a star chart and stuff like that. Really cool. And again, magnificent production. It just sounds great, like what they tried to do decades earlier with the symphony, involving that type of thing. With like in what happened in Time and a Word, it was so under-rehearsed and so, like I said, half-baked, that it's just like the symphony and the band never gelled. The tempos were constantly tearing, and Tony Kaye is just, at that era in the early 70s, was not a good keyboard player. And so luckily, 40 years down the road, they can put out something that had been stewing for a long time, and they really mesh and gel really well. The symphonic nature mixed with the rock and roll nature. And again, sounding like a cool, like hard rock, alt rock kind of mix album. I really like those 3 years, 99 through 2001. So yeah, there's Magnification. Cool album. Getting higher, guys. Number 11 on my list is the Fly From Here album. And I'm gonna mix in the Redux album, The Return Trip, with it as well, because they're the same album. Cool, distinct, different artwork, which I love, and in the same vein, from the same period in time that, Roger Dean was painting these two similar paintings. Beautiful, but yeah, I love The Return Trip so much because, again, we have Trevor Horn involved, and I've always loved Trevor Horn's singing style. I like his pop sensibility. He is a mastermind in the studio. His producing and engineering and all of the recording art, that everything he puts his hands on is just, turns to platinum. The guy's a genius. To me, I love his production style. So, and then, having him do that Fly From Here Redux, where he does all the vocals, just really fucking great. It's really great. And equally as cool, on the first one, on the Fly From Here original album with Benoit David, is that his name? Everyone's got a John or a Davis or a David in their name. Everyone in Yes history. It's hard to keep everyone balanced out and get the right name sometimes. But yeah, two really masterful, cool albums. They just sound great, and the songwriting is really cool. Yeah, just respect the shit out of it. So that's number 11 on my list from 2011, Fly From Here. Okay, before we get into the top 10 here, boys and girls, I want to remind you to please visit me on Instagram. Go over to Square the Circle Records on Instagram, find me, give me a like, give me a follow, do all that fun stuff. And if you haven't yet, like this video and subscribe to my channel. I have a rich history of all kinds of wonderful videos that you can watch, of my opinions and all of my, interesting things I talk about. So do all that fun stuff. Help me out. I started a contest about a month ago. It ends here in about a week or so. By May 1st, I'm going to do a drawing. So if you scroll down in my video history, find a little video that looks like this. And it's a contest video. You just watch the video and follow the instructions and comment and subscribe to my channel. Your name will be put into a hat where I'll draw 4 names out of my hat on May 1st. And whoever I draw gets to win some fun crap. And that's the name of the game. So there's all that. There's my spiel. Moving on down the line. Here we are at the top 10. In my opinion, the top 10 greatest Yes albums that they ever did in the studio. And so yeah, in the studio, that's kind of like, that's what we're talking about here. So before the video started, I mentioned I only got 20 for you. And most people that are Yes fans will say, hey, well, they have 22 or they have 21 studio albums, technically. Whatever your thought on that thing may be. I am of the opinion that they only really technically have 20 studio albums. I don't consider the Anderson, Brufman, Wakeman, Howe, whatever it's titled, I don't consider that to be a Yes album, because it's not. It's not titled Yes. It's not under the moniker of the band name. Didn't include one of the integral founding members of the band, which was Chris Squire. And ergo, it's not a Yes album to me. So that's just my opinion. And secondly, I didn't include the Keys to Ascension, 1 or 2, and the mixed mashup of all that stuff, the Keys studio album and whatever. Yeah, there was some studio tracks on those albums, but it was predominantly live songs recorded in those weird years, those in-between years, just like what is happening, 96, 97, 98, where a lot of the shit that we're playing live was dope. Those Keys to Ascension, like that's one of my favorite live albums by Yes. I like it way more than I like, you know, Yes Story and, and all that. Or sorry, Yes Songs. I like Yes Story. That's probably my favorite of all their live stuff. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. I just don't consider Keys to Ascension 1 or 2 to be studio albums. It's just my opinion. So I didn't include those. But hey, they got a special mention right here in the middle of my video, and they're both fantastic. They're really great. The Keys to Ascension, pick it up, buy it. It's wonderful. But yeah, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe project, didn't care much for it. Didn't really do anything for me. So I've never owned that. Okay, guys, here it is. Number 10 on my list. The best Yes studio albums. I'm putting Big Generator right there at the number 10 spot. Big Generator's a magnificent album. I love Trevor Rabin. I love everything he put his hands on. I think he's a magnificent songwriter and a wonderful singer and guitar player. Yeah, he deserves the accolades. The guy's fucking awesome. And he was a huge part of what Yes was in all those determinant years. Is, you know, where are they going? What are they doing? There's nothing wrong with being a pop band. There's nothing wrong with making a few $1 million so you can keep giving people your art and keep doing it for, you know, for life. And he's heavily responsible for that, for making sure that everyone else that was involved with Yes, what Yes was as an entity. Trevor Rabin is hugely responsible for keeping that spirit alive into the, you know, the 80s, the 90s, beyond into the 21st century. So Big Generator, full of wonderful hits, great, you know, platinum songs, you know, super mega #1 hits. I love it. It's a great album. So it sounds magnificent. There's lots of great technical playing on it. It has everything, including all that cheese dick nostalgia 80s stuff that we love dearly. So that's Big Generator to me. It'll always have a great place in my heart. That's number 10. 1987. Number 9 on my list. A lot of people, again, probably eyebrows being raised, heads being kind of shaken. This one, much like, you know, like Tormato and stuff, classic Yes. It's like, it should be ranked up number, you know, this, that, whatever, guys. This one falls flat for me again. Like Time in a Word, Tormato. This one, it just I couldn't squeeze it any higher. Talking about the Yes album, 1970. Pardon me, 71. 1971. Half-baked, half-cracked, very repetitive. Still has many awesome redeeming qualities. That's why it's my number 9. But for me, it's just kind of like, I don't know, the recapitulating, like repetitive, kind of like you take a song, you take Perpetual Change, or you take, you know, whatever, and you just kind of mirror it, and it's the same song on both sides, and it could have just been scrunched down to a really pleasant, like 5-minute psych rock prog masterpiece, you know. But yeah, All Good People is pretty awesome through the whole first part. I love the first part. The second half, just kind of that hippie, you know, thing is just kind of, I don't know, not really into it that much. Starship Trooper also has its really kind of endearing moments, but just goes on, and it falls flat at the end, in my opinion. It doesn't end with any real grandeur like it really ought to. And again, if they would have just taken those formative years and taken a little more time to kind of like hone certain things and kind of really fine tune a few things, by the time you get to late 71, some of those tracks would have just been more developed and would have, you know, been more impactful, in my opinion. But yeah, just my opinion. It still has, like I said, lots of redeeming qualities. Steve Howe, just introductory album for him. Of course, again, like I've mentioned before, Tony Kaye was just kind of like on the way out. Who knows what that whole situation was about, but the keyboard playing was just really not fantastic. It was apparent that they needed to get some new blood in there, with, of course, Steve Howe being introduced in his early playing and all that great kind of blues and fun, you know, all that fun stuff he was doing. The clap is on that album, right? Yeah, so it being a cool like introductory album for Steve Howe, where it really features Steve Howe a lot. You know, he's in the spotlight quite a bit on that album. So maybe that's the reason I feel it kind of just like it's weak. It's real weak in a lot of parts. It's because they were putting a little bit too much focus on this new guitar player, wherein the whole thing just needed to be far more rehearsed for a few years. But whatever, just my opinion. So number 9 with a bullet is the Yes album. Oh man, yeah, number 8 for me. This album's fucking fantastic. Again, because I praise Trevor Horn for everything he's ever done. But my number 8 is Drama, 1980s Drama, wherein again, like everything is just so masterful, sounds so beautiful. It doesn't have like any really like monumental awesome hits. I don't think this was the one album I was kind of disappointed with myself when I talked about my top 10 favorite Yes songs of all time, and I wanted to include one of these on my favorite Yes songs of all time, but none of them really were of that caliber. But still some magnificent songs. Tempest Fugit is the shit. You know, Machine Messiah is awesome. All of the lyricism and everything, you know, Trevor Horn added to the band at that period in time is just, you know, it's so unique and it's such of a wonderful quality. So can never slam the guy for not being John Anderson. You know, I hate people that do that. It's like, well, he's not John Anderson. It's like, fucking, of course, no one's John Anderson, but it's just different, and it's fantastic. Love the shit out of it. Wherein, like, you know, latter saints of Yes stardom, you know, those guys were just really trying to emulate what John Anderson was doing. I'm talking, you know, Benoit David and John Davison. In all reality, they're just trying to emulate John Anderson. Let's be honest here. Let's just be honest. So, yeah, all that aside, the Drama album is dope. I like kind of the departure that Roger Dean took on this album and kind of just being really cool, stark 80s, you know, style art with, you know, the black shadow cats and all that. You know, it's just neat. I don't know. It's an album from the year of my birth. I dig the shit out of it. It's a great fucking album. So, yeah, Drama. That's number 8 on the list for me. Getting higher in, guys. Here we go. Top 7. Number 7 for me is the eponymous release, the debut album by our favorite band. Just talking about the album, yes, 1969. Wonderful album. Everything about it. I love the stark, you know, the UK release, you know, that one. I like that. Really cool. Great introduction to, you know, here we are. This is what we are. Really cool. The US press, awful. That goofy picture of them all hippied out in front of like a dilapidated, you know, Victorian home or whatever it is. I don't know. It's a horrible album art. It's, yeah, what an incredible album. Just has, you know, a huge list of experimental, fun, psych, pop, prog to be, you know, just magnificent. I love all the singles. I think it only had just the Sweetness was really the only single that they actually put out for it, right? Like on a 7-inch. Oh, but what was on the A side? Looking around, probably that one. I don't know. They're all fantastic songs. It's just what a monumental album. Can't really say much more. I could just go into a bunch of drivel about it, but I'm not going to. That's my number 7, their first release ever. Love it dearly. Cool, edgy sound for the time. For 69, not a lot of bands sounded like they did. All right. Number 6 on my list. An album that I can never part with. It always has to be like way up there because it's an era in time that I'm from. This album was, you know, hugely inspirational and instrumental in my formative musical mind and what I like and what, you know, got under my skin as a kid, and just kind of like, it's a great pop album. It's a masterful pop album. It's absolutely perfect in nearly every way, shape, and form. Number 6 on my list is 90125 from 1983. Yeah, another one of those I don't have to just drivel on about. It's, everyone knows how for a, you know, a prog adjacent monster of a pop album, and where they went with their career and what they decided to do collectively was a very smart move. Very smart move. Because again, like I said, those Trevor Rabin years is what set them in stone, as just being like, you know, now they've got fuck you money, and they've got, we can be whatever we want to be. We can put out whatever music we want to put out. Fuck all the rest. And yeah, it's pretty magnificent what happened. Getting Tony Kaye back in the band with silver hair and just, you know, it's pretty wild, you know, that whole reunion idea. Getting all kind of some of the old boys back, and I don't know, pretty neat. I love the shit out of it. It's a fantastic album. So that's number 6 on my list. 90125. All right, here we go, guys. Top 5. Top 5 for this guy. Greatest Yes albums. My number 5, don't throw anything at me. My number 5 is Close to the Edge. Like I said, coming from a different era. I wasn't, you know, a young adult or a teenager in the 70s. I can understand where you guys are coming from and why this album has such a strong, nostalgic, important place in your heart. And I understand every little bit about that. But let me tell you about, I wouldn't say an unbiased opinion, just an opinion coming from a different generation. And of some of you who only really discovered this band in the last 15 years. From my opinion, great album, amazing. The title track, Close to the Edge, in a lot of ways, in a lot of periods in time in the song, borderlines on the exhausted, exhausting, like it's just kind of like exhausting an idea. I get a sense of being a musician myself for my entire life, and just knowing my way around a rock song, whatever, you know what I mean? Bill Bruford seems exhausted in this song, on this album. You can tell he just was bored with what he was doing. He wasn't happy with what he was doing. He wanted to move on. I can sense that in this record. Even before knowing the history of Yes. I listened to the music of Yes first for many, many, many years before I decided to then, like, okay, I'm obsessed with this band. Now I'm going to start learning about them as people and the history of the band and what happened throughout the history of the band, the players and the whatever, the discography of it all. Before even learning anything about the band, it was just about the music. And Bill Bruford's drumming seems exhausted and exhausting. So does Wakeman. His playing also seems just kind of like repetitive and just kind of going through the motions. Anyone that's a musician knows what I'm talking about. When you're just riffing, incessantly riffing in cycles, and you're just playing the same cycle over and over again, you know, that circular kind of just riffage, you know, it just, nothing was continuing to be inventive about it, and you could sense that things were about to fall apart. That's what just from that song, there are exultant moments, there's exceptional moments on that song, but it's just drawn out and pasted together in kind of a haphazard way to where it doesn't quite fall flat with stuff I was talking about earlier, but it just kind of like, it doesn't leave me with that sense of awe that everyone else gets from it. If you know what I mean. I'm not trying to be mean, and I'm just not trying to be overly critical. It's just, you know, I know it harbors, you know, that number 1, number 2, number 3 spot for everybody, always, forever. And I'm just, I'm a different type of guy. My brain works a little bit differently when it comes to Yes music. So it is what it is. It's number 5 on my list, right? It's still magnificent. 1972 is Close to the Edge. Has one of my very favorite Yes songs on it, of course. I think And You and I is an absolute masterpiece of a song. It is one of the most beautiful songs ever written by humans. I truly feel that way. Yeah, Siberian Khatru just also kind of like over and over. Thematic, yes, but not that fantastic. The coolest part in it is all the great chanting and rhythms at the end. Do da do da do da do da. You know, that whole thing, that shit's fucking great. Like, talk about progressive and just ingenuitive, and like, no bands at that time were doing that shit. Emerson, Lake and Palmer wasn't doing shit like that. The really intricate, creative, knock you upside the head rhythmic shit. Like, pretty amazing, pretty astounding. So, yeah, don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not throwing this one out the window. I'm not discounting its greatness. It truly is great. Number 5 on my list. Number 4 on my list. These are just all masterpieces. The top 4 are just all masterpieces. So that's like kind of enough said, really. Mine's Going for the One. 1977. Going for the One is from top to bottom. Every song is an absolute masterpiece. Last song on the album is my favorite Yes song of all time. It's their greatest song, Awaken. I like its yin-yang nature, the, dichotomous nature of, mankind and the band and this album, and just like opening up with the title track and just that burning, 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 boom, boom, it's unlike stuff that Yes was doing. Up until now, I mean, they were experimenting with that kind of fun, cool blues rock twangy thing, but they never really turned it into like a song, and a full length, like long song, and just how groovy and awesome it was. For 1977, yeah. In a world where, things were turning to punk rock and people were turning to other things, and they just kind of like, whatever, we're just going to keep making progressive, cutting edge shit, whether you like it or not. And it was cutting edge. It was amazing. Rick Wakeman was back in good spirits, realized that he'd made a mistake, that he should be playing with these guys, because as, the 5 of them together, they just are unstoppable. It was proven. When you have a good attitude about it and you realize that this group that you're involving yourself with are truly, incredible musicians. Like, I think he thought twice, gave it a year or two, made some of his own money doing his own, Rick Wakeman in a sequin cape stuff, and I better go back to Yes and make some great music. So they did. Yeah, just a masterful album. It encapsulates 5 of my very favorite Yes songs. Is there 5? I think it's only like 5 tracks. Yeah, Wondrous Stories, magnificent. That song was written by Alan White, wasn't it? I think Alan White was jerking around because he had just come off of a solo album, which was horrible, his ramshackled album, but he just come off that, and so he was just kind of like fueled full of like wonderful creative juices, and he was just playing some guitar chords, and they kind of grabbed onto that, and they're like, that's great, let's make this into a tune. And there you have, the Wondrous Stories song. But yeah, that whole album's just a masterpiece. So that's my number 4. Yeah. Here we go, guys. My number 3. My number 3, this is hard to do because you would think I would have this as number 1. It is my favorite Yes album. I just don't feel it's their best album. And I think a lot of you guys can agree with me, right? But in its own right, it is truly a masterpiece. Their longest album ever. Their most work. It takes a lot of work to like this album. It takes a lot of effort and time and energy, but it's full of soul. It's full of just all kinds of wonderful things that can be farmed and taken to apply to your musical life, your personal life, just in, I don't know, it's kind of like an all-encompassing spiritual journey, and it's so magnificent. It's my favorite of their work. So I'm talking about Tales from Topographic Oceans, 1973. In my opinion, is their 3rd greatest. And yeah, I don't really need to go on about all the parts of it and this and that. I mean, The Revealing Science of God speaks for itself. Title track, first side of an entire disc. It's absolute masterpiece. It's one of their greatest songs ever written. I think I put it on my greatest Yes songs ever written. I think it was number 2, wasn't it? I believe I put it like number 2. It's unstoppable. It's just a masterwork. So yeah, there's that. I don't need to drivel on about it, do I? My number 2, second best. It's an absolutely perfect album as well. It's just perfect. Achieved what they wanted to do, I think. Maybe no, not what they wanted to do, because Topographic Oceans was exactly what it needed to be and exactly what it was supposed to be. An immaculate work of art. Number 2 for me, they took Relayer, and they did that on one disc. They slap you upside the head with kind of a life-changing tune, you know, being the gates of delirium, and rewrite your DNA with that one song, you know, and then B-side is just kind of a little more progressive and odd, but still mildly pop sensible in places, and you know, the Sound Chaser tune and just all of it, To Be Over. It's just, it's a masterpiece. Yeah. I've used that word, you know, 3 too many times, so I'll stop using it. But it truly is. Really is an absolute masterpiece. Second only to, of course, Fragile. Fragile's their greatest album. It just is, guys. It didn't need to be, you know, all of these soaring, epic, you know, prog masterpiece of tunes. You know, it could still be a pop album, and it could still be, you know, radio friendly, and it could still be so many things, but still be a progressive masterpiece all at the same time. You know, all these little vignettes that the guys got to just add their little signature to the album. It's a signature album. When you think Yes, everyone automatically gravitates toward Fragile. They just do. It's got a little piece of everyone's individualistic nature to it, but it is an all-encompassing journey, all painted out for everyone to enjoy. Yeah, I mean, whatever, get the fuck out of town. You know, Roundabout as an opening, just that bass line. You know, Monumental will be known for the rest of time as one of the greatest bass lines ever written. Super cool. Yeah, Long Distance, Run Around, they're kind of like another cool radio hit, kind of pop, fun, friendly, you know, just, I liken it to, I don't know, some of that stuff on the A side kind of just, it reminds me of kind of hippie era American music, like what the Grateful Dead was doing in the late 60s and early 70s. And I like that shit. I think that like Steve Howe was really, I think he was really into that. I think he was really into like kind of American blues rock and hippie shit of the late 60s and 70s. You can kind of get a taste of that a lot on Fragile, as well as his, you know, Mood for the Day and all that stuff that he does is masterful. He's just he's so much better of a classical guitar player, you know, that kind of like folk and classic style. He's so much better at that than he is just being a rock guitar player, like soloing and trying to be a rock and roll guitar player. He's just not the greatest rock guitarist. But whatever, this album just showcases his talent and everyone else's talent so wonderfully. This album has my favorite of Bill Bruford's drumming on it. It was still, at that period in time for me, it was still tolerable. When you get to Close to the Edge, it just kind of seemed, like I said, just kind of drawn out. He was bored. It was boring drumming, uninventive. But Fragile, he still had some really fun moments, some really cool ideas and concepts that not a lot of people were, you know, playing with at that period in time. Jazz mixed with rock, mixed with whatever else, the avant. You know, he was a very avant-garde drummer. I can respect that aspect about him. And on Fragile, he was still, you know, he was still good at it. I don't know. Wakeman was on point, absolutely 100% on point, because that was his debut with the band. You know, just all of his strong suits, just letting all of his strong suits out. And as far as poetry goes, you don't get much better than John Anderson's poetry on this album. A lot of it not so nonsensical and whimsical. A lot of it's more kind of like experimenting with some kind of darker undertones thematically, and go into some more introspective and maybe some darker places. When you're a young man, you know, in 1971 or whatever, that's, you know, that's what you get out of someone's art. You get all that kind of frustrative and you know, a little bit of anger, a little bit of frustrative anger in the music. I really like that. Yeah, what a masterpiece. That's it for me, guys. That's my number one, Fragile, 1971. That's Yes's greatest album. That was 20 of Yes's studio albums ranked. I did it, and I didn't black out. I didn't pass out. Now I can go take a nap, try to make myself not so sick, because I really got to get back to work tomorrow. So again, if you guys haven't liked and subscribed, do that. I have a ton of video history that you can scroll down, listen to me talk about all types of music, not just nerdy prog rock. And, I talk about all sorts of things. So check out my channel, like and subscribe. Yours truly, I'm Not Dead Yet, from Springfield, Oregon, Aaron Major, Square the Circle Music Channel. Peace out, bitches.